On graphing equations in slope-intercept form. Essential question. How do you graph an equation in slope-intercept form? Well, the equation for slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. In this equation, m is our slope, or our rise over run, and b is the y-intercept, or where our line crosses the y-axis. All right, first example. Graph the equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so we have an equation, y equals 3x plus 1. Y equals 3x plus 1 is in slope-intercept form. Now the number we always graph first is our y-intercept. Keep in mind, if you have troubles remembering which one is the slope and which one is the y-intercept, the number that's all by itself without the x next to it is the y-intercept. So since this is where our line crosses the y-axis, I have to put a dot at 1 on the y-axis. So since our y-intercept is plus 1, I'm going to go to positive 1 on the y-axis and put a dot. The second number I do is 3, which is my slope. Now I think it's easiest to rewrite 3 as a fraction, so 3 over 1, because I always have to do my rise and then my run. So I'm going to rise my top number, the 3, and run my bottom number, the 1. So 3 is my rise, 1 is my run. Now I always start from the dot that I made for my y-intercept. So I'm going to start from the green dot, and then I'm going to rise 3, run 1. Now remember, rising a positive 3 means I'm going up. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and then running a positive 1 means I'm going to the right. If I wanted to make a third dot, I would go from my red dot. So I'm going to go rise 3, so up 1, 2, 3, run 1. Then I can connect this and make a line. Now let me show you why this is correct. So if I look at this graph, my line crosses the y-axis at 1, which is right, that's what I needed. And if I count my slope, rise 3, run 1. If I do it again, rise 3, run 1. So all of them have a slope of 3 over 1, which is what I wanted. So there is my line. All right, second example. Graph the equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals 3/4 x minus 2. Now the first number I want to graph is this negative 2 because it's the y-intercept. It's the number that's not next to the x. So the number by itself, not next to the x, is my y-intercept, what I graph first. So I'm going to go to negative 2 on the y-axis and put a dot. Second, I'm going to graph the 3/4, which is my slope. Now I'm going to rise the top number and run the bottom number. So rise 3, run 4. So from my green dot, I'm going to rise 3, meaning I'm going to go up 3 and run 4. If I want to make another dot from the blue dot, I can rise 3 again, run 4. So now if I want to check if my line is right, look at where my line crosses the y-axis. It's at negative 2. And if I count my slope, I'm rising 3, running 4. Check it again. Rise 3, run 4. So my line is correct. All right, y equals negative x plus 4. So the number all by itself, not with the x, is 4. So this is my y-intercept. So I'm going to go to 4 on my y-axis and put a dot. Now my slope this time is negative x. But you have to remember what number goes in front of x when you see just an x. And that's a 1. So I'm going to squeeze a 1 in between my negative sign and my x. And then to write negative 1 as a fraction, it's negative 1 over 1. So my slope is actually negative 1 over 1. So I'm going to rise negative 1, meaning I'm going to go down 1, and then I'm going to run positive 1. Whenever our slope is negative, I always make the top number negative and the bottom number positive. You don't want both of them to be a negative, because a negative over a negative makes a positive. So if your slope is negative, make the top number negative, the bottom one positive. If I keep going from my green dot, if I rise negative 1, run 1, rise negative 1, run 1, and I could keep going forever. Every single line, you can keep adding more dots forever. So if I check my slope here, I went down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, which would be a negative 1 for the slope. And graph the equation in slope-intercept form, y equals 2/3 x. Now this time we don't have a number that's next to the slope. So what we can put in there is 0. This is the same thing as having a y-intercept of 0. So if I graph 0 on the y-axis, and I'm going to make this negative 2/3 instead of positive 2/3. So I'm going to change that equation. So then, from my dot, I'm going to rise negative 2, run 3. Now remember I said if our slope is negative, I always make the top number negative, the bottom one positive. So I'm going to rise negative 2, run 3 from my green dot. Rise negative 2, run 3. I can connect them with my line. And let's check and see if we did it correctly. So I went down 2 over 3. So that was my slope, negative 2/3. Then once again I went down 2 over 3. And that was my slope, negative 2/3. So there is my line. Summary.